Joe presents TKO, together with 32 Red.
Hello and welcome to TKO on Joe, together with 32 Red podcast and YouTube show with you every Thursday. Now, some of you may have listened or seen the interview with Darren Barker that we did 3 or 4 weeks ago about the early part of his amateur career. Due to very popular demand, I've had tweets every couple of days saying, could you come back and do part 2? So we've said yes. And here you are, welcome back.
I'll tell you what, thanks again for having me. I would just like to say, whatever camera, thanks to all those messages, because they honestly, they were lovely.
Yeah.
You know, because part of me was thinking, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Who cares about my story? But they honestly, to everyone who wrote a lovely message, I really appreciate it.
Oh, mate. Well, I think testament to the bloke that you are
thank you.
And the career that you had. But we only got halfway through, so we're going to dive straight back in because we've got 45 minutes. I want to cover as much as possible. This is your life, Darren Barker. I need a little red book, don't I?
Yeah.
Right, so we finished at the Commonwealth Games. So you won the gold medal, and one man that was in the crowd watching was Tony Sims. And I know that he knew Tony Burns very well. He, of course, was born in the flats opposite the Repton.
Yeah.
So he was an East End guy, growing up where you would have a lot of success as an amateur sort of a few years later. So he really was in the right place, the right time, as somebody that specialised in taking good amateurs and making that transition to the pro style.
Yeah, Tony, I was on the phone to him this morning, actually. He's a boxing man. He knows the sport inside out. And he's a top bloke, and it just kind of made sense. He was in business with Tony Burns Senior's son, Tony Burns Jr., obviously. They had a management sort of stable, so Tony was doing the training, Tony Burns Jr. was doing the management, TBS, and because of the relationship between the two Tonys, and the three Tonys, it just kind of all sort of fit into place. I got on well with Tony. They sponsored me a car, and there was no contract signed or nothing. It was all verbal and a handshake, and all it was when you decide to turn professional, just come talk to us first. And that was it, really. And I guess it was handy for me to have met Tony before, because even when I was an amateur, I used to go to Tony's gym and work with him, and we was going to talk about this, I know, but I guess what better way to sort of bring it up now was when I was amateur, it was completely different. It was 4 2-minute rounds, computer scoring.
The white patches on the gloves that had to land.
Exactly. Yeah. So essentially, though it was boxing, they were 2 different sports. Yeah. The scoring was different, and the round format was different. It was, it was completely different.
It was more like fencing, wasn't it? Really?
It was, and I'd mastered it. I'd had I say mastered it. I didn't go on to the Olympics or anything like that, but I'd done quite well, sort of working out that format of scoring. Or judging, sorry. I had a real fencing style, like you say, and I was picking the shots. I never really hurt anyone, ever. So working with Tony before I turned pro helped, because there was a transition, and there is some differences that need to be made. You've got to start planting your feet more and being a bit more aggressive. But Tony never wanted to change me too much, because he knew that most of my success, or all of my success, had come through from my boxing ability and my natural sort of pedigree, I guess, and my knack of just being able to box quite well. So he just wanted to kind of shape me differently and just help me transform into a better, into a good professional. And I think he'd done a good job.
Let's talk about the sort of early pro fights that you had, because you were under Mick Hennessy, because he had the sort of terrestrial TV deals at the time, so that was giving you a little bit of exposure. Howard Clark was your debut opponent, and that was in Nottingham, wasn't it?
It was in Nottingham on a Froch undercard. And just quickly there, why we was with Hennessy, because Tony Sims was good friends with Rob McCracken. Rob McCracken had a stable that was under the Hennessy banner, in the gym in East London. It was like the class of 2002 or something like that. You had Dave Walker, Carl Froch, Howard Eastman, Lee Meager, Matthew Furwell, all of those guys. So he had a very good stable. So it was an obvious sort of move for us to slip in to that camp. It was great for me. I had a lot of sparring with those guys. Superb sparring with all of them. And it was good. Yeah, really good start to my career. Like you say, Howard Clark was my debut. Straight from 4.2s into 6.3 minutes.
Yeah.
That was I was a little bit apprehensive. I remember saying to Tony, do you think I'm all right for this? He goes, look, you're doing the rounds in the gym, you're fine, no problem. You know, someone with your skill set and fitness and pedigree will have no problem. And he was right. You know, it went the distance. He knew his way around the ring, all right. Howard Clark, you know, been in there with Fernando Vargas, fought for the IBF title, a middleweight title. Was it maybe
It was
junior,
IBF.
was it the junior middleweight or middleweight?
I don't know, but it was definitely the IBF.
Yeah. And I remember telling my dad, I've got my opponent for my debut. And he goes, all right, go on, who is it? I went, a bloke called Howard Clark from up Midland sort of way. He goes, all right, what's he done? I went, he's had about 100 odd fights. He fought for a world title. He went, what? Your debut opponent has fought for a world title. Yeah, don't worry about it. And so I remember him being really nervous coming into change room beforehand, and they were a bag of nerves.
Yeah, I bet they were. What were you getting paid this stage of your career?
So again, all verbal, and and hats off to Mick for doing that. I would never stitch anyone up or anything like that. But my debut was it was $4,000. So it was £4,000 for 6 rounders, and then my money went up to $8,000, I think, or $6,000 if I did 8 rounders.
Right.
No, I think it was $6,000. It's a 4 to 6. And that's how I started out. And to be honest, it worked out all right, though. There's deductions. You've got to pay for certain things. I was also getting 10% of ticket sales. So I had quite a decent following. So you're getting 10% of all your tickets. So that sort of tops up your money. And I was active. I was kept busy. I was averaging around 6 fights a year, which is good. Because it's weird. You're all of a sudden you're in a business, not just a sport. So though you want to be busy, you want to be match fit, you want to be learning and improving, you want to be earning. Whereas in the amateur, I wasn't really thinking about that. Though we touched on it, I was getting the £1,281 from Sport England that in some ways I was squandering. But, it wasn't, that was there. I was on a retainer, if you like. I was getting the money, but it was never really about that. It was the sport. It was about winning medals. But as a pro, though I wanted to achieve, and my goal was always winning world titles and titles, I had to start earning, and trying to buy my first house and do this, do that. So my life changed a little bit, as did the sport.
Of course, Gary at this point is flying as an amateur.
Yep.
He's gone to Melbourne and won the Junior Commonwealth Games. So you guys, I guess, after that first 12, 18 months, you've got off to a good start. You're 7, 8, 9-0 as a pro.
Yeah.
He's won, numerous amateur gold medals at the international level. You've sat down. I guess Christmas for every family is the point where you sit down as a team and you debrief on your year. They must have been a couple of really sort of good Christmases.
Yeah, good. Really good times. It was a real good era, time. A great time in our lives where everything was going well. My family, though they've been involved in boxing their whole lives, they're a bag of nerves because they understand how dangerous the sport is. So when you sit down at Christmas and you're celebrating our achievements and the fact that we're healthy and we're around and nothing bad's happened, it was great. And another thing, it was brilliant going to shows like when Gary was boxing, we'd all go mob-handed, loads of us, all the Barker's friends, and he didn't lose. It was just brilliant. Like you're always going there and celebrating victories. It was great. And I miss those days. I miss that. When I look back in my career, those are the days that I miss the most. The amateur days, going to the shows, like I can't get across how much boxing meant to me and my family and my brother. It meant everything to me. Like boxing still is my life. You will never come across anyone who boxing's everything. It's like my legs, Mark. It's everything to me.
And I can remember in your book you talk about when you and Gary used to like make the trip to and from the gym or going on the way to competitions.
Brilliant.
You're like your brothers in arms, but you're also wide-eyed. You haven't been corrupted by the world or the business, and you're wide-eyed. And I remember you saying you're taking in like those old like covered markets and the sights and the smells and stuff, and rode the tube together. And I guess it's just that's what it is being a brother, isn't it? It's just the day to day, taking it in, being silly, being together, and going through life and a journey, not really aware of what the future's going to hold, but just enjoying and being in that moment.
Yeah, like I've just got back off holiday. Hence, I've got a bit of colour and I'm a bit tan in there. I watched my kids. I've got 3 kids, but the two eldest are 8 and 4, and I watched them together. And though there was 15 of us went on holiday, they're just with each other all the time. It's beautiful. I love watching it, and it melts my heart, and I love that they get on so well. And basically what I'm getting onto is all the fun that they're having is they're sharing it together. And that's what I was doing with my brother. You know, there was lots of tough times, but so many great stories, and you summed it up perfectly there. You know, the sights, the smells, everything that I was doing, you know, the victories, the defeats, everything. I was sharing it with my brother, and that's how, you know, we're very close anyway, but it brings you closer together. And if I see breaking news or something amazing happen, you want to get on the phone, don't you, and tell someone or share it. Or this has happened, I've done this, or that's happened. And I had that with my brother all the time. It was great, and that's what I miss. You know, I miss that era. I miss those times. I do. But I look back at them with fond memories.
Let's talk about your first bit of adversity in the fight game. Conroy McIntosh from Wolverhampton. Did you get a little bit comfortable in that fight, or did he just catch you with a good shot?
I did. One, I didn't listen to Tony. 2, I wasn't warmed up properly, and that was nothing to do with me or Tony. They changed the running order. I may have been afloat, sorry. So I thought I was slipping in just before the main event around
Suddenly
4 or 5. Called. Exactly, bang, you're on first.
So what happened? So this guy you're expected to beat, but ultimately you've gone in a little bit cold.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember it was on the day weigh-in, on the big stage at York Hall. Who know it? Who've been to York Hall know the big stage there. And I go up to Scales, go to weigh-in, and I get on there, and all of a sudden someone brushes past me, and there's this big guy, and he gets on the scales, and Tony went to me, "That's your opponent," and I started laughing, saying there's absolutely no chance, like just laughing, and it was him, shorter than me, but he was a block. You know, he was just a wall, and I wasn't really bothered. I come across all sorts in my boxing, but he was big, and put my wraps on, and I was like, "Quick, get your gloves on, you're going through it." All of a sudden, bang, we're in the ring. Was winning the fight easy, and Tony would always say, because now and again I used to like the space in a ring was mine. I used to like to dominate that space. Whether I'm going forward or going backward, I would do what I wanted to do. So if you're an aggressive come forward fighter, I would meet you sometimes. I'd take a step back. I'd move round. That was my area to sort of show off and do what I pleased. And now and again, I would go on the ropes, which Tony didn't like. And one thing Tony would say to me, when you're on the ropes, don't lean back on them. And that's exactly what I'd done. I leant back on the ropes. He stepped in with a big right hook and caught me flush on the chin. But there was a moment in that fight where I learned something about myself, that I had heart and I had toughness, and I was always searching for that, if I'm honest. My family, the men in my family are hard blokes, tough building. My dad and my granddad and my uncle's hands, they're like, honestly, they're just smashed to pieces through hard graft. So though I was boxing all the time and they knew I was tough, I wanted to prove to them I was tough. So there's a moment in that first or second round, whatever it is, that I'm dropped and I get up, and that was instinct. I got up and I got put down again. I got up again, and stopped him in the 7th round. And it was a big moment in not just my boxing career, but in my life.
And then after that, you boxed Paul Samuels.
Yeah.
And again, he had a reputation of being a puncher. And given what had happened previously, you obviously a little bit wary going into a fight like that. Strange, I think it was the 2nd round, wasn't it? It was early in that fight where he caught you and it was your glove touchdown, but you didn't go down. And then there was a bit of a melee. Just talk me through for anyone who hasn't seen that fight.
Well, I think it was the first round. And what happened, I think that... So when Conroy McIntosh, then I won the Southern area.
Yes.
So I won the Southern area, my first title, buzzing. And then To be honest, to be deadly honest, my first real step up was probably Paul Samuels. You know, Hussein Osman's tough guy who I beat for the Southern area, went 10 rounds. But
of course, you messed the weight up that night.
I messed the weight up. I ended up running around Ali Pally with a bin bag on, and you got on the scale. But I beat him over 10 3-minute rounds. Massive learning experience for me, not only in the ring but outside, doing the weight properly, etc. But he had a win some lose some record, so I was always in there as a huge favourite to win. But with Paul Samuels, I was the favourite. He'd been tested, he'd been there, done it, he'd had some big fights, big wins, and I went into the fight full of confidence, if I'm honest. At which time? So that was a Friday night. I think my brother boxed on the night before. It's all, again, very sort of blurry when I think about it. But Gary had repped in London or someone like that in Scotland, and couldn't make it down in time. Or it may have been the same night. It might have both been on the Friday night. I think it was on the Friday night.
Because he flew down, didn't he?
Yeah, so he was up there with my dad. So my dad weren't at that fight, I don't think. Again, it's like... You block a lot of these things out.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's almost like therapy, these sessions, because you sort of start bringing them up.
I'm here for you, mate.
Yeah. And this is the Friday night, so I'm fighting Paul Samuels,
yeah.
and I'm moving around again, enjoying it. I don't with a body shot because I heard him go, and I'm moving around. All of a sudden, I'm skipping to my left. What happened was I lift my back foot up, so I'm essentially just standing on one leg, and he catches me. Wasn't hurt at all, but I did get knocked down because of the shot. So I touched down. As I'm down and I go to get back up, he throws a shot. So luckily I've managed to get out the way of it, and just by instinct I've thrown a left hook because I'm thinking this is still, I've not heard the ref, but it's still going. If you're throwing a shot, I'm going to throw one back as well.
Yeah.
And I guess protect yourself at all times. Deadly honest, could have been a disqualification, could have been a no contest. And if it had been one of those, it wouldn't have impacted my career at all. It was one of those freak sort of incidents that happened, but it all resolved. It all worked itself out. I got the win, first round knockout. It was a terrible knockout. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube. It's a bad one. But yeah, if I would have got disqualified, I would have made no odds. It was an instinct. He threw a shot, I threw a shot. But I've seen Paul since, and we've had a couple of funny moments because I was later on in my career fighting for the European title. Someone come behind me and put their hands on my face like that, and he goes, "Guess who?" And Eddie Owen walks around and goes, "It's the geezer you knocked Spark out in the first round." I was like, "Ed, drop me out," and it was Paul Samuels.
Oh wow,
yeah.
I remember reading in your book about when you saw Paul laying on the floor with the oxygen over his face. You sort of said that there are those moments where obviously you're in the midst of battle and he's trying to get you, you're trying to get him, and that's all you're thinking of. But ultimately, there are those moments that bring life into sharp focus, and you realise that's a guy with a family and brothers and sisters, as were you. And that weekend was obviously when everything changed for you. So Gary has obviously come back from this amateur show, and you've gone for a sort of celebratory night out because you both won your fights, and you're up for a good time. You've gone to a dinner show, haven't you?
Yeah, very close to the gym I trained as a pro. Once a rugby club, it was the Prince Regent in Chigwell, and Tony Sims had put on a show, and we were invited to go. So we sat at a table with him and the family, and my brother, and I had a load of mates. He had a load of mates who were up the West End. So we were on our phone, sort of, come on, should we go? We said, yeah, come on, let's go. So we went home, we nipped home. We was in black tie, so we was never going to go to the West End in black tie. So we nipped home, got changed, and met our mates up there, and we were very close, all of us, though he's a few years younger than me. We were just all close, all hang out together, and have a good time. But it was weird, and I've said this before, like, we went into this club, Strawberry Moons, and we just sat down together. It was crazy, and sat down and had a chat.
Was that unusual?
No, it was unusual in the fact that we'd been together all night, and all our mates are there. So just crack on with them. But they'd all had a few drinks, we hadn't, and we was just like, let's plot up and have a chat. And we're just chatting about things we would, boxing, girls, whatever, just having a laugh. And it was as if somebody, I've said this before, like someone up there was saying, it's going to be your last moment together. Sort of treasure it. And we did. We had a good time, and it was then home time. We left, and we got the bus home. And anyone in London who lives in London who goes on the night bus knows it's a war zone. Yeah. It's an absolute war zone. Yeah. Everyone's steaming drunk.
Get the taxi if you
you've
can
got all sorts on there, and we had a bit of ag on there. We had a bit of an idiot on there started giving it a big un, and my brothers end up chinning someone because he threw a punch at my brother, and then I've smacked the geezer, and I had half of his tooth in my hand. It's just when you box, when you're a boxer, you know how to look after yourself, but you have controlled aggression, discipline, and respect. And I got bullied at school. I'm never a troublemaker ever. Same as my brother. But we would never stand for bullies. So if anyone's giving it the big one, we'll put you straight back down to earth. And we did, and we got kicked off the bus. We had to get another bus. It was a pain in the ass. But ended up going home, and my brother then started saying, look, I'm going to go and see Jessica, his girlfriend at the time, up in Leicester University. And I went, yeah, go in the morning. He goes, I think I'll go now, because he hadn't drunk anyway. Because I'll go up there now. I went, don't bother, because I was living with my nan and granddad, because there was so many in the house. My brother, who had his missus and his son. Then you had my brother, my sister, my mum, my dad. So my nan and granddad lived around the corner, literally a stone's throw away. So I jumped in with them against my nan's wishes. So I said to my brother, do me a favour, go in the morning. He goes, all right. So he's opened the door, and I've walked off, gone to my nan and granddad's house, and he'd gone up there. I was woken up in the morning by my granddad, and like I say, my family are really big warriors, and I feel bad at the time. I felt bad when I look back at it, because I assumed he was fine. It was just like,
you said he was a deep sleeper as well.
Yeah.
So you thought he was asleep to start with, didn't you?
Yeah, I just thought everything would be okay. It's typical Barker family worrying, and he goes, quick, he's in the hospital. And then I start thinking, oh, blimey, this is serious. And I jumped in the car, started driving up, got to the M1, and it was standstill, and I knew something bad had happened. Went up the hard shoulder and nearly had a row with someone who wouldn't let me go past, because they thought I was just trying to beat the traffic. Got to the hospital, and they went, who are you? I said, we're Barkers. They went, all right, go in there and see my mum and dad, and they just said he's gone. And that was it. That was it. It still does me now, when I talk about, though it's it can be therapeutic talking about it, but it's still hard. It's still very raw after 13 years.
13 years is a long time for people living a sort of a normal, happy life. But when something like that happens, time condenses, doesn't it? And I think unless you've been in that position, you don't necessarily understand.
Well, just life will never be the same. It has never been the same. And there's been some real good moments, but moments that I've wanted to share with my brother, but I've not been able to. And it's, life's brilliant. Life's great. There's so much to celebrate in all of our lives, but it's very difficult as well. Not a day goes by that I don't think about my brother and wish he was here, and wish I could turn back the clock and have stopped him going up there. But he was his own man. There's not a great deal I could have done, mate.
So for those people that are hearing this for the first time, and there will be some people, he was in an accident on his way to Leicester.
Yeah, I'm assuming, and I'm guessing that he'd fallen asleep behind the wheel and crashed and died pretty soon after. And
because you saw him, didn't you?
Yeah,
he was in the next room.
Yeah, and my life changed forever. it was crazy. It was going so well, like you say. And Christmas, everything was brilliant, and I didn't want to see my brother. I didn't want to see him dead, and it was just horrific. You know, not because of how he looked. It was just seeing my brother there, lifeless, and I was talking to mum and dad, and I caught a glimpse of him in the next room, and it wound me up, and I ran out and I punched the wall on the hand that I'd already punched the geezer's face in with, and my hand was in a bit of a bad way, and I was crying my eyes out. I was crying my eyes out, and thought, look, I've seen him now. Let me go in there, and I just held his hand, and you know, felt like he was going to come back because he didn't look banged up. But anyway, you know, that was that, and yeah, it all changed. My life changed, you know.
So 7 or 8 months in the wilderness after that, I think, understandably. In fact, a little longer.
Yeah.
I guess you couldn't even think about boxing at that point.
No. I just I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. Just seeing the family crying all the time. Everyone was upset. We just lost, you know, someone so important. Yeah, it was just it's just a big blur. You know, I was going out all the time, abusing myself, just
drinking a lot and staying out.
Yeah, I was just I had no respect for anybody, but most importantly for myself. I'd given up. I was just like, you know, It was in some respects, and not in such a dramatic way. I don't know if anyone's seen Afterlife with Ricky Gervais. It was something like that. It was like, well, I'm so depressed and I'm so down that nothing matters. I'm going to live how I want to live. And I just went like, in that case, I was drinking too much. I was fighting. I was just being like, just, I don't know, like, it was crazy. It was an horrible time, and went to Las Vegas because one of my brother's best mates moved to San Diego a couple of years before, and we'd always been in contact, and he took the news really badly. So I said to my other brother, Lee, and my brother's best friend, Gary's best friend, Daniel Stone, let's go to Vegas. I sold I had a Mercedes, sold it, or $5,000 for it. I said, look, I'll book up, let's go, let's get out of here. I've got to get out of here. Booked up Vegas for us three, went out there, see Ali, the mate, and who was in a bad way, all hugged, and it was kind of good to get away, if I'm honest. It was crazy. I had $5,000, and so mad thing. Like I say, I had no respect for myself. And one funny story was, I'd never touched drugs in my life, and someone that Ali was in America, as you well know, a lot of them smoke a lot of weed. So I went, go on, I'm gonna give me some of this. Go on, give me some. And I'd never touched it before. So as he's rolling it, he basically, I remember sitting in the car, I was in a car park, and he cut this cigar and he emptied it, and he put this weed in it, or whatever it was, I don't know, and he rolled it. As he's doing that, he put a little bit of it in this little pipe thing. So I went, go on. So I started sucking on this pipe, and I'm going, and nothing's happening. I'm thinking, this is a load of rubbish. Why do people do this? So he's giving a thing, and I'm smoking it. Nothing's happening. All of a sudden, it's hit me like a ton of bricks. I kid you not. And I went to my brother Lee. I went, do me a favour, swap me. I'm banging trouble here. I'm in trouble. I don't know what's going on here, but this is weird. Oh. So I've gone in the back, and they've gone, right, let's get something to eat. And I'm seeing all weird lights flashing by, and I'm like, what is going on here? I went. They stopped at this place called In-N-Out Burger, and they've opened the door, and I went, let me out quick. I feel sick. I don't know what's going on, but I'm out of it. I couldn't even walk, and they're all filming me, laughing at me, and I'm going, Lee, I'm in trouble here, mate. I'm in trouble. And I remember waking up the next day. Like I thought I was like, my friends and my brother would tell you the story. It's really funny. Like I was saying, like, you know, that's it. I'm gone. Tell mum and dad I'm not coming home. I'm gonna have to stay here. I'm in trouble. And then the next day I woke up and I was back, but I still was a little bit.
Really?
But it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I've never ever touched it ever again. It was like sort of a blessing in disguise. But yeah, we had a good time there, you know, and then come back to reality. You know, to come back home. Spent the whole Mercedes out there.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Tell you what, we'll pick up from this in just a few moments' time.
Yeah.
And we'll move on to some of the big fights
All right.
on your comeback. You're listening to and watching TKO on Joe together with 32 Red. You can download and subscribe via the usual channels. This week, former England rugby captain Chris Robshaw sat down with James Haskell to talk about England's disastrous World Cup campaign in 2015. He also shared his tips for the upcoming tournament. That is available to watch and listen to right now, House of Rugby. Right here though on Joe, you're listening to TKO with Darren Barker together with 32 Red. So Tony must have been instrumental, Tony Sims is, in getting you back on track. And I mean, given what had happened, to be back in the ring 11 months after Gary had died, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Well, when you think about what happened the first 5, 6, 7, 8 months, it was. It's so hard to cram all of this in because so much happened.
I know.
But I basically went to the gym, hit the pads with Tony, started crying. I said, I can't do this anymore. Had a little bit of a break, went back to the gym, started hitting the pads with Tony, getting upset again, all the memories. At which time Tony had spoke to his mate about me seeing someone he had seen. Tony's friend was a recovering alcoholic, I think he was, but he'd been in trouble, etc., and wanted me to see the guy he'd been seeing. A therapist, but seems like a really strong word for me. He was just like I don't know the word, like
Counsellor maybe,
counselor,
or
it
life
seems
coach,
very
or...
life coach. Yeah, it seems very. I don't know, like a very.
Do you think sometimes, I think men especially feel like with mental health problems, whether it's depression, recovering from a loss of a loved one, the word therapy or therapist, everyone thinks
maybe that's it, mate. Yeah.
People think something has to be so bad that you have to go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can just be a way of getting your life in check, reassessing your priorities, and having someone that can get you back on track where you need to be.
Yeah, look, just quickly on that. Look, we go to the gym, we work out, but not nearly enough of us are working this.
Yeah.
This is the most important organ or whatever it is that we've got to be tuning into and looking after because it's instrumental in our everyday life.
And your point, and for those, producer Jack just made a good point. For those that are listening, you're pointing to your head and your brain.
My head and my brain, exactly.
Yeah.
It's we've got to start looking after this, and that's exactly what I've done. I went and see this. I agreed to Tony to go and see this guy. I agreed, but I didn't actually believe I'd go. But they knew that, so Tony's friend drove me to the door, put me in the door, and sat me down. And I'll never, ever, ever forget it. He sat down, and like I'm gonna say this guy's name, the therapist guy. He's called Bruce Lloyd, and I have to say it because he needs to know how instrumental he was in getting me back on track. He was a special man, and I'll forever be grateful to him because there was no money exchange or anything. He just wanted to help, and I sat down. Tony's friend left, and again, I don't know about saying names, etc., but also Tony's mate, if he ever sees this, you know who you are, and I appreciate you an awful lot. Sat down in the chair, and Bruce just looked at me straight in the eyes and just went, calm down. And I just burst out crying. Floods of tears. And then what followed was an extensive sort of 2 a week, go see him, get the train from High Barnet, Northern Line to the Oval, sit down with him, and it was just the way he would describe it is clearing out the wound. For me to be able to heal, I have to clear this wound out, and the wound was what happened to my brother, and it was never letting go. It was just learning how to manage with it. It was learning to stay present, and learning how to look after myself. There was never any talk about me getting back in the ring. And then it all just fell into place. But yeah, Tony Sims putting all that together was instrumental in me getting me back in the ring eventually, because there was a void, and between me and Bruce, we come up with that. By the way, some of these sessions where it was like whoever's seen Good Will Hunting, it was like
Robin Williams,
Matt Damon and Robin. It was exactly like that, very similar sittings. I'd never seen the film till after later on, and it was very, very similar, our sessions. And going back to boxing, it was right, look, we can't do this with Gary, but we can do it for him. So I then started thinking, look, it's all I know. It's all I can do. It's the only way I can earn money. But even better than that, I can start dedicating things to my brother. So every time I win a fight or win a title, we'll dedicate it to Gary, and his name will then continue to live on. Though he won't be able to fulfill his ambitions and would have achieved great things, I'm sure. Though he weren't ever able to do that, I could do it through my success. And that's exactly what I've done, mate.
You went on, of course, Commonwealth, British.
sorry.
That's your phone for anyone listening.
Sorry. Go through them.
As long as no one rings, it's
go
fine.
through them like you can't imagine.
Yeah, me too, mate. I didn't even know your number till last week. Commonwealth, British,
Yeah.
European champion. The hip injury, and I'm only skipping through these, not because I don't want to, but I think time-wise, I want to get onto the two kind of big fights that defined your career. You essentially, you're a double European champion. You had that time out a couple of years after that.
Yep.
Those 5 years between sort of 08, 09 and 2011, 12, 13, how did your recovery period go alongside boxing? How did you start to feel? Did you ever find a new normal whilst you were boxing?
I started to feel I started to feel good about boxing again, if I'm honest. You know, I started slowly starting to enjoy it because I started enjoying. I in some ways enjoyed the victories more because they meant extra to me. I was able to dedicate them to my brother, so victories was almost magnifying a little bit. Then they were a bit greater. So every time I won a title, so when I won a Commonwealth title, it was fantastic. And though I'd had my comeback fight against a guy called Greg Barton, it was for no title. The second one was a Commonwealth title, so straight back into title. I won the Commonwealth title, and the interview after the Greg Barton fight, I didn't get emotional, but after winning the Commonwealth, I did.
Ben Crampton, right?
Ben Crampton, yeah, an Australian, unbeaten Australian. I got upset in the interview after the post-fight interview because I'd done it. It was the first title I dedicated to my brother. Then it went on to the British. I won that, which was a real personal achievement. I always wanted to win the British, but again, to my brother. Then I won the European twice. But the reason I won it twice because I won it, had to vacate it because of injury, and won it again. So I had 2 European belts, again, both dedicated to my brother. So it was fantastic.
And then that brings us to the Sergio Martinez fight.
Yeah.
He was pound for pound, top 3 at that point? He was the golden boy of the WBC.
Yeah.
He was the king of Atlantic
Knockout
City.
of the year against Paul Williams.
Mate, I mean, and ultimately that presented you with your first crack at a world title.
Yeah.
So you've gone to Atlantic City, and I get the feeling there's a little bit of disrespect for you in that they treated you as a kind of an unknown who hadn't really earned his shot, and they didn't know who you were, and all this kind of press were a bit like, who's this bloke?
Yeah.
But you'd won every belt you could have won in the build to that. So it wasn't as if you were an unworthy challenger or hadn't gone through the right routes to get your shot.
Yeah.
Did you like being the underdog?
Yeah, I did. It was new for me, but I didn't get the respect I probably deserved because no one wanted to fight Martinez. So it was just this guy who's unbeaten. He'd done well in Europe. They were out of options really, and
so awkward though, wasn't he?
Yeah, ridiculously awkward, but it was a pivotal moment in my career. You know, I was struggling. I'd already had one hip operation done at this point, so I'd had my left hip done. And I was doing all right, to be fair. It done its job, but what I was doing, I was overcompensating on the right, on the left now, masking the pain that was on the right. And I remember the last run before the training had basically finished, my hip went on the right side. So, you know, just fast forwarding quickly, when people say to me, you know, you threw the Stern fight, blah, 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 you was injured going into the fight. I was injured going into the Martinez fight. I was injured going into previous fights. It's crazy. But that's the nature of the sport. So my hip went and...
That's my phone.
Is that your phone now? And then,
1-1.
Yeah, my hip went and I went into the fight. But it was an amazing experience, a surreal experience, a special moment for me going to the States, boxing in America, top of the bill in a Bulwark Hall, which had many great fighters come out of there. You know, it made Gatti famous pretty much. And yeah, it was very awkward, and it was going to plan. It was to frustrate him and get the crowd against on his back, and turn the screw after the midway point.
Because it's very like, obviously southpaw, throws the jab from the hip, very spiteful, sets a lot of traps and baits you constantly with his head, leaning in.
Always.
And you didn't take the bait for a long, long time.
No.
But on the odd occasion, where hard not to take the bait when someone's constantly leaning in. And on the odd occasion, you'd get kind of stung with the left hand.
That's my game. That was my game.
Yeah.
Like I'm from the best amateur boxing club in the country, Europe, possibly the world. Repton, churned out champions left, right, and centre. They had something in the water there because they had southpaws coming out of every door there. So I knew how to fight these guys. This was, it weren't. That's why I was confident going into the fight. Didn't know how I would get on, if I'm deadly honest, how much I thought I could win the fight, but I was confident going in there with a southpaw. And that, leaning in with your head, it was brilliant to me. And I busted his nose and everything was going to plan, but he turned the screw. He showed me what it meant to be a proper champion. He perforated my eardrum in the 10th. I couldn't feel my legs. In the 11th, it hit me with... I think my legs had gone before, and I just they just give way. It was like a feeling of not having legs. I just sort of dropped, but crazy. I sort of remember being there and being aware of what was going on, but I just could not feel my legs.
Do you know what? And it's in the 10th round, because I was going to actually ask you about that. You can just see when he catches you with a shot, and it's all of a sudden your movement stops, and you go tight guard, and he's still not sure whether you're hurt or not. But there's definitely a point where you go flat-footed. Yeah. And there's also a couple of little tells, which you know from watching other fighters. In the 11th, anytime there's a bit of a distance between you, you just try and bounce a little bit, which is the little telltale sign that a fighter is trying to see if he can get the feeling in his legs back.
Because, honestly, you know your stuff, because that was spot on. Because I'd experienced perforated eardrums through my hundreds of painful rounds with Carl Froch. Yeah. He used to perforate my eardrums like you can't imagine. So I knew all about this injury, and that's one thing I used to do. I used to jump up and down, try and get the feeling back. And this one was horrific. The doctor afterwards said this is one of the worst perforations I've ever seen. It's a massive, huge hole in my eardrum. But my stock went up. My stock went up, not just in the States, but in boxing. And lots of people, lots of opportunities come my way after that. The Chavez fight, there was lots of people wanted to jump in with me because I'd done so well. They wanted to do better than Martinez did against me. Yeah. So if they could get me out there before the 11th, that's the sort of way I was looking at it. So there was big money fights being thrown at me. Which were tempting, if I'm honest, because I was kind of content at that time with what I'd achieved as far as titles are concerned. European twice, Commonwealth British, what I'd done as an amateur, I'd done a lot. And I'd fought a marquee pound for pound future Hall of Famer.
So he stopped you in the 11th.
Yep.
It was a kind of almost, it was two combinations close together, both upstairs, and they both finished on a sort of really whipping kind of right hook. Yeah. From southpaw.
Don't even look like a big shot.
No, just above the ear, and clearly where you've been getting perforated and hurt, and you went down and you were actually holding your head almost in pain, which is unusual. Normally you see people either chinned upstairs and they look a bit disorientated, or they're holding their body because they've been hurt, but you're actually holding your head in pain, and you didn't make the count. And so that was the end of that. You had a couple of comeback fight. Kerry Hope, was it?
Yeah. Funny enough, after the Martinez to the Kerry Hope fight was the longest layoff I had.
Yeah.
I had my second hip done, my right hip. And again, that coupled with the fact that I was content, was arming and ahhing about fighting ever again, if I'm honest.
Really?
I'd achieved, I'd managed to dedicate, 4 titles to my brother. Done all right.
But that carrot's dangling, and from that performance that couple of little adjustments, few things go your way, and you've got.
And there was a void. I remember Tony going into the gym and playing a massive part in my career, saying to me, he said a name, I can't remember the name. I wouldn't want to say the name anyway because it would sound like I'm being disrespectful. But he said a name and said, "Do you know who that is?" I went, "No." He went, "Well, he was a British Commonwealth European champion. You don't even know his name, and it's going to be the same. People aren't going to remember you."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, that's true." It wasn't so much people remembering me, but if they don't remember me, they're not going to remember my brother. So I was like, right, we're going again. And we wanted to go back into a tough fight, and Kerry Hope was. But I had a change of attitude, and I thought, this is my last crack now. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give it everything.
And Atlantic City, it was again.
Yeah.
You're with Eddie Hearn at this point as well. You've gone over. Did you feel any sense of, not misgivings, but any sense of anticipation because you'd had a negative experience in Atlantic City before? Or were you looking forward to going back
The complete opposite. It was redemption for me. It was going back to the place where I'd lost, and I kind of called for AJ to go back to New York for the same sort of reason, if I'm honest, because it was a great feeling. Though it wasn't the same person, it was all the same arena, but it was the same place, where the same boardwalk I had to walk down, the same places I was popping into. So a lot of the memories were coming back, but I was full of confidence, and I truly believed I was going to win that fight. I had a bit of a wobble the morning of the fight. I went a bit negative, and I had a chat with someone, and they pulled me back round. But I still cannot believe it. I still cannot believe I'm a former world champion. I cannot believe it.
Let's talk about it. Daniel Gill was the man in your way.
Yep.
He had the IBF middleweight title. Yep. He'd had 4 successful defences of it.
He was a unified champion.
He was against Felix Sturm, of course. So a proper champion, Australian. So he'd had to travel a bit too. Atlantic City, different venue this time. The ring walks. Michael Buffer gets your name right this time.
My name right, yeah.
And I think most people know by this stage that in the Martinez fight, he called you Darren Baker, and obviously you're good friends with him now, so you joke about that.
Yeah.
Buffer's in the ring, and it's go time.
Yeah, I was in the zone. There was a lot... I don't know if I've ever spoke about this before, but a lot went on back in the changing room. I used to never go to the fighter meetings, the rules meeting, whatever it is, and the rules meeting, that's it, where you try on the gloves. Tony used to do it. He's tried on these 2 pairs of Lonsdale gloves. Yeah, lovely, they're fine. Excuse me, they'll do the job. Gone in the changing room, he's wrapped my hands. It's time to put my gloves on. Put the gloves on, and they didn't really fit properly. My thumbs are longer than Tony's, so it was like... Anyway, I was having aggro with his gloves. They had to get the other pair. The other pair were worse. So I'm thinking, oh no, this is all I need. There's no other gloves. I have to wear them. So my thumbs are right cramped. But luckily, it's one of those things. Once I got to the start of the ring walk, completely forgot about it. So it was all right. But at the time, I remember thinking, this is a nightmare.
And if you're having a bit of a
because I was hitting the pads and I could feel it in my thumb because it was so tight against it, and it just was like... I'm a perfectionist. I want things to be perfect, and that was far from. But got to ring walk, and it was U2. I still haven't found what I was, I've been looking for, whatever it is. And I remember listening to words, thinking, I haven't. I'm this close. I got in the ring, and Daniel Gill's turn to get in the ring, and I'm already in there, and it's quite weird. It was only the second time that I've ever gotten into ring first. It's kind of weird waiting for an opponent to come in. But as I'm doing so, there's a big Aborigine playing the didgeridoo.
He's still playing now.
He went on for... Honestly, it was the longest... it was the longest passage of music I've ever heard in my life. But it wound me up. It took me from... I was always kind of chill, but it gave me a bit of fire in my belly, and an extra bit of fire. He got in the ring, Buffer announced me correctly, and that was it. And I remember the fight, the first bell going, and I used to love boxing. I was touched on it before about sussing my opponent out, and he was very hard to work out, and he was a lot more awkward than I anticipated in the build-up. And I was like, well, you're quite good on your feet, and you're making me fall short. It doesn't really happen. So I changed about halfway in the first round. I thought, right, I'm just going to go for it. I went back after the first round and said that, Tony, I'm going to have it with him here because I'm fit, I'm strong, and I know I can take his shots and I can outwork him. And Tony trusted me. He went, yeah, all right, well, look, don't do anything silly, don't drop your hands, don't do this, and just crack on then.
I just wonder whether in episode 1, for those of you that have heard and watched it, that bit of advice that Tony Burns gave you before the Commonwealth Games final back in 2002 about leave everything in the ring because you don't want to have any regrets.
That was it.
And all of those things in your life that you'd absorbed subconsciously, whether it was the no guts, no glory sign above the door of Repton and the little bits of advice and the lessons you learned from being put down in those early stages of your career to falling a little bit short against Martinez. You sit down after round one and you just think, do you know what? This could be my last shot, and I'm going to give everything.
It was it. You're exactly right. That was the moment where it all come together. You know, all the experiences, them moments where you talk about Tony Burns there. I knew if I didn't win this fight, I never would have fought again. Ever would have got in the ring again. So this was everything. I had to win this fight, and I had to make the adjustment. And thankfully, I did. It didn't look pretty, but it made for a great fight.
It's a really good fight. Yeah,
you know, it made for a good fight.
He worked with you, but you were like possessed that night, and you fought a little differently to what you have done in the past. But there was a lot of trading, and it was nip and tuck. But you always felt like you had the edge.
Yeah,
and then middle of the fight. I mean, it's still, to this day, one of the best body shots I've seen.
Yeah.
And I've watched a lot of boxing. Just tell me about it.
Yeah, it was a peach of a body shot. Everything was going to plan. I was winning the fight. Not much in the rounds, but I felt I was winning it and got caught with a peach of a body shot. My whole life flashed in front of me. You know, crazy. I've got my brother there, get up, and visions of my daughter saying, you know, you've got to provide for her. You've got to win this fight. And it was just a crazy...
you hear the crowd as well.
Yeah,
I guess.
like it's just a lot of muffled noise, but it's loud. It's, you know, I can hear his crowd, his team screaming and shouting and celebrating. Mad, like 9.5 seconds seemed like 9.5 weeks. It was mad, 9.5 years. Just so much happened in that moment. And again,
what got you up?
I'm going to say my brother. I'm going to say the final piece in our jigsaw puzzle, you know, the final piece, winning that world title for us, for him. And I got up and I was in agony, mate. I was in agony, and somehow managed to pull myself together. And
because he came straight at you as well.
Yeah, because he weren't sure. He hadn't seen that shot land. So I can tell he wasn't sure. But as the seconds went on the count, he knew, and I'm kicking my feet. I was winded. He's banging trouble here. And he come out and he's firing. I was that close to getting stopped. And I fire back at the end of that 6th round, and there's a shift in power because he's so close to beating me and I'm so close to getting beat, where it's almost like, I'm still here, mate.
Well, if
that's all you've got, is that all you've got? Because if I'll tell you now, if it's the other way around, you wouldn't still be here. And testament and credit to Daniel Gill. He stayed in there and he mixed fire with fire, and it was epic. And I go back as a kid, and when I used to play out winning world titles, like I think I said in part 1,
did, yeah.
That was my. That's how I wanted to win a world title. I wanted it to be in a fight that people would talk about forever. And though it wasn't the greatest fight in the world, it was a very good fight, and a fight that I still get tweets and messages daily from people saying, "What a fight! One of my greatest boxing moments. That's why I got into boxing." And I cannot believe it, mate. I can't believe it. But yeah, the final bell goes. I'm celebrating. I think I've won, but I knew it was close. I was the away fighter. It was Daniel Gill's American debut.
10-8 for the
10-8 for the round.
Yeah.
Not much in it, but Sky Sports had given me the fight.
Well, of course.
HBO had given me the fight. And I was just telling you back there that when Buffer is stood with the card there, about to read it out, my brother's behind him. He was in the corner, so he's on the outside of the apron, and he's seen the scorecard. So he goes 114, 113 to
Gill,
or was it 115, whatever, to Gill, then 116, 111 to me. So he knows I've got it right. That's it. But he's told my family at the front, Darren's won this, but then horror hits him and he's thinking, if I've got this wrong, how bad is that going to be? But then 114, and when they said 114, I thought this is going to be a draw then, because it usually is. And 114, 113, and whoop, there's a winner. And the new, you know, what can I say? You know, it's just crazy. Like it had come true. My wildest dream had come true. My scenario of how I wanted to win the world title had come true. Everything had just, my life was fulfilled. Everything, I'd done it. And then there's a moment I jump, I'm celebrating, I crash the floor, and I'm very upset. You know, and there's sad tears because I achieved what I'd set out to do, and it was almost like letting go of my brother. Like, we've done it now, mate.
Yeah.
You know, you can sort of
go.
You can go now, and honestly, you can see my hairs.
Mate,
they're
you're
like,
telling me.
It's doing me.
You're
It,
telling
like
me.
honestly, it does me now thinking about it, because
it
it was
does,
a
yeah.
moment that I kind of let go of my brother, in the sense that we've done it, you know, and it was crazy. You know, I had one hell of a hangover after.
6 years, Saturday just gone.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. And like I said to you on the phone the other day, the only regret I have is that we weren't mates at the time,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
having known you the last year,
You sent a lovely message, mate, and to all the people that sent lovely messages, you know, it means an awful lot, and I can tell by reading them, they're heartfelt and they mean it, and I'm one lucky man. I'm so lucky, mate. Honestly, I'm so lucky. Yeah.
Bloody hell. You're getting me going here. Right, before we go, because this is I think it's the longest podcast we've done, and he's had 2 parts. Can you believe it?
I don't shut up, no.
Honestly, ridiculous. Right, let's do 32-second challenge with 32 Reds, part 2 of Darren Barker's.
I know the drill.
Tony Sims,
Legend.
Mick Hennessy,
Good man.
Froch,
Hard swear word.
you can say, Conroy McIntosh,
Powerful.
York Hall,
Home.
Sergio Martinez,
Legend.
world champ,
Me. Yeah, like dream come true. I not enough words.
Atlantic City,
Thank you.
retirement,
Fantastic.
Gary,
I'll miss you.
Darren Barker, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Beyond
Cheers,
the
mate.
pleasure, mate.
Thanks.
Beyond
Thank
the
you.
pleasure. Well, sadly, that is it. I think we could probably do about 3 hours with Darren, but maybe we'll have you back at some point
Yeah.
again, mate. But thank you so much. We'll be back for Lomachenko and Luke Campbell next week doing the Matchroom Boxing show.
Yeah,
looking forward to
looking
that,
forward
mate.
to
Is he your pound for pound number 1?
He is indeed untouchable. Mastered boxing.
He absolutely has. We'll hopefully have him on the show, potentially with his promoter Bob Arum on TKO next week. Elsewhere on Joe, Kelly Cates on Liquid Football, joined by John Walters and Steve Sidwell for some great changing room stories. That's quite a new series, but check it out. You can download and subscribe to that via the usual channels. From Darren Barker and myself, from TKO and Joe, together with 32 Red, thanks for listening and watching. We'll see you again next week.
You've been watching TKO on Joe, together with 32 Red.